Sara Reisman, welcome to 7 Minutes.
Thank you. Know
We're,
me love. Thank you for inviting me.
we're very happy to have you here. And I'll introduce you. You are the executive director of the Rubin Foundation and artistic director of the Eighth Floor. You're based in New York right now.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit of how you're doing, what's been going on the last couple of months. Have you been dealing with the whole situation?
I mean, like anybody, it's a shocking. Uh, there's the shock of the fact that the coronavirus, really has been as lethal as it has been, and debilitating for a lot of people as it has been. And then the dismay and fear,
Mhm.
fury about the way that the U.S. government hasn't really been able to respond properly. I was sick for about 3.5 weeks with the virus, and wasn't able to get a test like most people because I
Mhm.
didn't have respiratory problems, but I had other pretty severe stuff tests. So it's been an interesting experience because it's been kind of full on in the fact that working as the executive and artistic director of the foundation, I've been, of course, trying to manage a process of like moving our work online
Right.
and trying to figure out a way to lead that process in a way that's both trusting but also making sure that we all remain productive and engaged as possible. It's just been an interesting process to try to figure out what can an organization do in response to this. And one of the struggles really is, how do you help people and help organizations when you can't be in direct contact with them? So it's a real shift in thinking and practice. Um, how can we as a foundation be responsive to the needs of grantees that we work with?
Mhm.
And then we also have an exhibitions program at the Eighth Floor, public programs, and trying to think, what would it mean? Like, we had an exhibition that was supposed to open next week called To Cast Too Bold a Shadow, a show that looks at entrenched forms of misogyny in our culture. And so it's like artworks that resist that,
Mhm.
artists and artworks that are working against
Yeah.
misogyny. Artists like Tracy Emin and Joy Manaya, Raj Kamal Cologne, really interesting group of artists. So what has been kind of the adjustment is to think, okay, we don't know. It was supposed to open May 14th. We now have a kind of open-ended timeline that we could look at opening in the fall. We could look at opening in the beginning of 2021. It's really hard to say right now. So trying to do that work, and then thinking about what can we do in the immediate moment. And what we decided was we've launched a performance series called Performance in Place that will begin on um, May 19th with a performance by Nicolas Demidas Deves with two collaborators, called Art and Friendship. And so
Mhm.
it's a it's a collaboration that was underway before the coronavirus. Really looking at like the ways that people work remotely. So just we approached Nicolas as somebody we've worked with a lot in the past,
Mhm.
and his response was, I was actually making a work with two collaborators remotely, and it didn't have to do with the pandemic, but it becomes more timely since that's
Mhm.
how a lot of people are having to work now.
Right.
So in doing that, it does feel like, okay, we can give artists a small commissioning budget to do something from where they're based, if it's at home or if they're staying somewhere else. Of course, some artists have access to studios, not all. So we're trying to understand how we can be helpful, but also understanding who can use the help in the most effective way and in the kindest way possible. Like,
Mhm.
ideally, we're not going to be pouring funds into an organization that's cutting staff
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
Thinking about who are the organizations who have the capacity to maintain that engagement. Also, like, I think what's happened in the philanthropic community is there have been some very fast and timely responses for like artist resources. But I do think there's an awareness now that, like, okay, this is going to be a longer term um, process.
Right.
So, and that's just interesting to see that, like, there's short term and longer term responses that need to happen. Yeah, one of the things we thought about physically is that we have space. We have
Yeah.
a gallery, an exhibition space, the eighth floor. And one question is, if, like, let's say by September we can go back to work. We can start installing the next show, To Cast Too Bold a Shadow. um, we do that, but the problem or the question remains, how many people can gather at any given time. So are we looking at using some kind of reservation system like Eventbrite to um, book appointments for people to come see the show so that there's a certain level of distancing maintained.
Hmm.
Um, and then beyond that, if let's say we really can't install the show that soon and we need to look at a later moment, then is there a way that the space can be made useful otherwise? Is it a meeting space?
Right.
Is it a space that grantees that maybe don't have their own spaces can use
Hmm.
on a temporary basis for
Hmm.
for specific meetings that need to happen? It's just so hard to tell if like you know can exhibitions happen, can meetings happen,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like what can we do in person?
Right.
So we're really
Right.
waiting for certain um, decisions to be made, at the civic level, I guess,
Yeah.
civic more than federal,
Yeah.
because I think the civic and state will be more sensitive to actually what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's the physical question. I
Hmm.
think, of course, in the past, we've done a couple of things. We've done a few projects that have existed offsite in different forms. And so, like with Elia Alba's Supper Club, there were a number of suppers outside. We did most of them at the eighth floor as in the time that we were involved. But then there were also a couple of dinners that happened in different sites, like in Washington D.C. with the collector. But another example is in 2016 we staged a performance with Tanya Bruguera in Union Square Park called Referendum, which was a performance, kind of a performative vote against, for or against borders. So the framing of that was borders kill. Should we abolish our borders? Yes or no?
Hmm.
But I mentioned that because that was done at the north end of Union Square Park. And
Yeah.
so it's possible that if we really can't convene in the space, maybe we're looking at doing some public interface. Maybe we take it to public space,
Hmm.
where things can be experienced maybe in a less concentrated way, but with access on the viewer's own terms.
I'll say thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.